Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson. Today is Thursday, October 3rd. And on today's episode, we're going to preview the Yankees versus the Royals. The American League Division Series is set. The Royals swept the Baltimore Orioles in the wild card round. And on today's episode, Joel and Tommy are going to break down everything about this matchup. We'll discuss the pitching rotation, who will start game 3 for the Yankees, how tough is the Royals pitching, Bobby Witt Jr., MVP candidate, but the Yankees have so much talent in itself, and Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, and Garrett Cole. We'll discuss legacies on the line for Boone, for Judge, for Brian Cashman and company. We'll discuss the X factors heading into this matchup. Who's going to come up big for this Yankee squad, and who ultimately will help them win this series. We're going to break down all this and more if you stick around and watch the Pinstripe Post. Guys, how you doing?
I'm good. I actually have been on the Mets now for about 10 days or so. So do you want to break them down also? They're playing a do or die game tonight here in Milwaukee. They've been a fascinating story while the Yankees have been hibernating, but I'm on a plane back tomorrow to a workout in the Bronx and then a game on Saturday night. So, as the kids call it, in the boogie down, right?
It's right, in the boogie down. Joel, we're at the point now here. Yankees fans are excited because while we saw yesterday that the Orioles get eliminated, we also saw the Houston Astros get eliminated. So this has now come down to the Yankees and 3 AL Central teams. The Yankees versus the AL Central is just such a fascinating discussion in itself because they've had such a long history against the American League Central of dominance of recent here, especially in my lifetime, and I know in Tommy's lifetime, but the Royals and Yankees have some playoff history in itself that predates Tommy and myself, and they have some pretty cool history if you watch some of the clips that are going around right now between the matchups that they've had. Just overall sense for you, Joel, when you're seeing that this is how it's now playing out, what are you most looking forward to in this Yankees versus Royals ALDS?
So before the 2022 ALCS, the Yankees and the Astros, I called George Brett and I said, I wanted to talk to someone. The Royals lost to the Yankees in the ALCS in 76, 77, and 78. The Yankees were their Astros. And that's what I wanted to talk about because in 1980, the Royals broke through, beat the Yankees, the big home run, Brett off of Gossage, and then they won their first World Series. And I talked to the idea of where you're constantly pushing the rock up the mountain and it falls back. At some point, you have to get to the top of the mountain. I talked to George Brett about how they did it. In this case, the Yankees are not going to get that opportunity. On one hand, great. That's a much better, theoretically easier road for them. I think it would have been better for them to play the Astros and deal with it. But I love stories, and I don't give a crap if they win or not, So I thought it would have been, and by the way, it's not like I wanted to go back to Houston. I've been there plenty, got it, good with it. But it would have been the better story if the Yankees could finally, in a year where the Astros were theoretically down, the Yankees went 6-1 against them, 4-0 to begin the season. But it felt like that was a different Astro team. From the moment the Yankees stopped playing them in mid-May, the Astros had the best record in the major leagues. Meanwhile, against the AL Central, the Yankees had the best record against another division of any team in the sport. Want to talk about the AL Central? The Royals were 12-1 against the historically bad White Sox. They were under 500 against everybody else. So it's a subject we talked a lot about last week, Tommy and Ryan, which is, I get it. It's a crapshoot. You can have a bad injury, a bad bounce. That's going to be, I'm just going to use half the word, a bunch of crap. The Yankees have the playoff field in the American League that they only could have dreamed about. The Orioles were the only team in the AL East that had a better record than them. They're out. The Astros, who got under their skin and owned them, they're out. They got 3 AL Central teams. Since 2017, the Yankees have been in the playoffs against 5 AL Central teams. They've gone 5 for 5, 12-4 all told. Meanwhile, in 6 other series against either the Astros or an AL East team, they went 0 for 6, and they were 5-15. All the AL East teams are out. The Astros are out. The AL Central's in. I can't hear about a crapshoot this year. The Yankees, I get it. The Royals are a live wire. The Tigers might be. The Guardians might be. These are the Yankees of Judge and Soto and Cole and a $300 million payroll and been there, done that. And they can't talk about we're a championship team at the end of a year where there is no championship. It feels to me like World Series, get there or bust. Like, we'll discuss if they should beat the Phillies, the Dodgers, who's ever there once they get there. Padres. But they got to get there. This is lined up. They have yet to play a playoff game, and this is lined up perfectly for them.
This is a game of lanes, right? We talk about lanes so many with pitching and everything. This lane could not be any more perfect for this Yankees organization right now. The AL Central, you've dominated them in recent history. There's no excuse. The payroll, the talent that you put together. I mean, Joel, this is something I thought was interesting too. You're going to have the 3 top MVP voters in the AL facing up in this ALDS with the Yankees and the Royals, with Judge, Soto, and Bobby Witt. I don't think I've seen that. I mean,
I think Gunnar Henderson's going to finish ahead of Soto.
Really?
I do.
Okay. All right. But still, you're talking about elite talent here in the top of these rosters.
Here's a way to think about this as far as just the competition, which is the Royals do not have a very good overall offense. It's dominated by 2 players, Witt and Perez. The Yankees have the very same thing. They have an offense dominated by Judge and Soto. But I would argue Judge and Soto are better than Witt and Perez, and whatever cast the Yankees have left is better than the Royal cast. The way the Royals would create real opportunity here for another upset, and they have this thing. Their season is already remarkably successful. They lost 106 games last year. They not only got in, they've now won a round of the playoffs. You know, they've kind of set themselves up a little bit like new GM, JJ Piccolo, put together a little more aggressive. Lugo, Waka, they were aggressive at the trade deadline. They got Lucas Erceg, who's a really good late inning guy. They could lose 3 games, 35-2 to the Yankees, and it's a successful season. The Yankees' only successful season is at least getting to their first World Series since 2009. If I was going to pick a lane, how the Royals do this is I actually think they're slightly helped by the bizarre schedule where Sunday is an off day, right? Because I think it allows them to get back to Cole Reagan's, a kind of lefty who the Yankees don't hit well. And if it somehow was 1-1 going to KC, Lugo, after another off day, is lined up. And I think the best game pitched against the Yankees this season was by Seth Lugo, who dominated them. So,
wasn't Lugo already set to go, even though he pitched on Tuesday? He's
starting game 1?
He's not starting game 1, right? But I'm saying for game 2, though, he could be pitching game 2, though.
That's yes. So he could, but the question is, if you want to stay in line, you could go Waka, Reagan's, Lugo. Would you rather have the lefty at Yankee Stadium,
right?
Or Lugo pitched great at Yankee Stadium,
right?
So so 2-3, because how this is set up for a way the Royals to have a starting pitcher where now it's suddenly Rodon and Schmidt or Hill, where you say, hey, that might be, the Royals are an extreme underdog. Where might they have advantages? So extreme pressure on Cole to get game 1. And then the Yankees got to get at least 2 or 3. And they're set up well pitching-wise, 2 and 3, because of the strange off-day situations. They have a lot of bullpen issues, but not at the end with Erceg. And as we saw against the Orioles, maybe their bullpen is starting to peak up a little bit as well. And they have a running game that could be unnerve a team a little bit. They led the American, I'll give you a little quirky stat. They led the American League in steals of third base. So this is where we talk all year about, are the Yankees an alert, good baseball team? When there's a runner on second base, you can't fall asleep against them, especially if it's Michael Garcia, who I think went 14 for 14 stealing third base this year. So, keep him off the bases. He's not that great a hitter, but if he's on the bases, better be alert, because otherwise he's going to take one on you. So I feel like that's how they can they get to the starting pitchers who do it. And then the other strange thing, and especially if, to your point, Lugo goes in 2 with a history of being a reliever, it also allows them to come back in 5, right, and give them something if they need it. if this thing goes that far. So having said that, the Yankees are extreme favorites to win this, but that would be the script, I think, for Kansas City to cause the Yankees a lot of problems over the next week.
Before we dive into like the matchups and that, I know we talked about it a little bit there. I do want to hit a couple things, a larger picture here for this Yankees roster. And we've talked about it earlier this week in Monday's episode. It seems like Jake Cousins is going to be good to go for this ALDS, which could be a big weapon for them out of the bullpen, which means the Yankees bullpen should be full force besides Nestor Cortez, which obviously was a big blow in itself. The other thing is it doesn't seem like Anthony Rizzo is going to be good to go for the ALDS. So this puts the question on, are they going to start? And I saw Aaron Boone's interview yesterday on John Boy where they asked him about, will Oswaldo Cabrera get that first base start? He didn't seem to think that Oswaldo is going to get that start. It most likely will be a combination of Rice and whatever else you put there. For you, Joel, are they going to miss Rizzo's defense that much, especially in the postseason? I mean, defense is you hammer it all season long. You got to play good baseball. You got to be crisp on defense. How big of a loss is that going to be for Rizzo for the ALDS?
Yeah, look, the vastly inexperienced team when it comes to this time of year is the Royals. The Yankees might lose in the playoffs, but they play a lot of playoff games over the last period of time. But Ben Rice hasn't played playoff games. Austin Wells hasn't played playoff games. Anthony Volpe hasn't played playoff games. Luis Gil hasn't played playoff games. It's interesting. For a Yankee team, it's not a very traditional thing to have so many guys who also are going to be playing in front of 45,000 people on Saturday night. And it will be interesting how they all handle it. I think that they probably feel the overall difference between Ben Rice and Anthony Rizzo isn't that large. I think it's a little bigger because I think Rizzo late had defended better than he had all year. And I think he contact-wise just getting on base hit better than he had all year. It almost felt like he said, okay, I might not have the ability to get over the wall anymore, but I do have contact skills. I'm going to try to use them well. And I thought he was a very helpful bottom of half of the lineup piece late, and clearly is a guy who's not going to be rattled no matter what happens, either at the plate or in the field. And I'm so glad that people watch our webcast, guys. If they do, they know this is one of my themes, which is the Yankees always have to be thinking about this time of year. When you get to this time of year, who can mentally, spiritually, emotionally handle it? Well, I know Anthony Rizzo can. Like, he could go 0 for 20. He's going 0 for 20 based on skill, not fear. It's Nestor Cortez. He might give up a 3-run homer. He's giving up the 3-run homer because he threw a bad pitch. He didn't throw a bad pitch because he was afraid. We're going to have some players on the field for the Yankees where we're like, it's like, why were the Yankees a dynasty back 25 years ago? Oh, a lot of reasons, but like from day one, Derek Jeter can handle October. Mariano Rivera can handle October. Andy Pettitte can handle October. Bernie Williams can handle October. They can handle it. They thrived in October. Not every player can do it, and all the young players we don't know about. Those are Hall of Famers and borderline Hall of Famers, I just said. And part of what made them great was they were great in the postseason. Like, it didn't fluster them. They just could handle it. And the Yankees are going to have some guys we're going to wonder about taking the ball. And again, think about it. I'm going to make the analogy again. Carlos Rodon is so lefty A.J. Burnett to me, and he's sitting there in game 2. And you could convince me he has A.J. Burnett's 2009 postseason, which included a blow-up, but also included 2 of the biggest wins of that postseason, because I think he has that kind of stuff. Or you could convince me it's like the second inning and Marcus Stroman is warming up. I could go either way, and imagine if it's a loss in game 1 somehow, and you're sitting with Rodon. So again, I'm creating some nightmare scenarios. The Yankees are heavily favored, but this does not feel like a postseason so far where there's a dominant team, including the team with the best record in the American League. So there are ways for the Yankees to become unhinged, and I'm wondering what this group looks like under the gun in all ways.
Ryan, one of the nuggets you mentioned Aaron Boone's interview yesterday that I thought was interesting was They did an inter-squad scrimmage yesterday, and the two first basemen were Ben Rice and John Birdie. It wasn't Ben Rice and Oswaldo Cabrera. Oswaldo Cabrera was playing shortstop. John Birdie could have been the shortstop. I wonder if we see John Birdie at first base against a lefty in this series. They're clearly trying to get him reps. They had those struggles against lefties. They're 2 for 19 against Cole Reagans. That's not including John Birdie because I didn't have him as part of this, the 11 guys that I was looking into. But I would not be shocked at this point. And they like to do these things of all of a sudden throwing a guy, like getting wild in the playoffs. Like
Joel's shaking his head.
The Davey J. Happ stuff comes to mind. I mean, Oswaldo Cabrera or Oswald Peraza starting at shortstop in the playoffs and not really getting much experience during the regular season. I would not be shocked if we see a John Birdie start in game 2 against Cole Reagans at first base.
Yeah. When do I guess rosters have to be in by early Saturday? LeMahieu can't make it, can he?
Oh,
he hasn't come far enough.
I can't believe we're getting updates on him, Joel.
We're getting updates about him all the time.
I'm wondering, it's a race for me, which updates I'm trying to ignore more, LeMahieu or Kodai Senga's?
Senga, at least if he is healthy, he should be on the roster. But DJ, there should be 3-4 guys in front of DJ. Like Oswald Peraza should be an option before DJ. There should.
Well, we're talking about first
be an
base.
option before.
Talking about first base, though.
I get it, but there's 3 guys now.
I wouldn't play him either. He was arguably one of the 5 worst players in baseball this year. But it's a position that a diminished Anthony Rizzo's loss has impact because there's not a clear thing there. And I might just say, you know what? I'm going to put Ben Rice there and see if I could get a run.
I'd rather one-handed Anthony Rizzo over DJ LeMahieu.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to have to think about DJ LeMahieu. I was just
okay.
It is scary,
shits and giggles moment, Tommy. Work with me.
Well, I think I don't know. They're giving so many updates that I don't know if it's just a shits and giggles moment.
Well, are they giving updates or is he giving updates?
I don't. That's a good question.
It's a great question, Joel.
You mentioned, Joel, the Carlos Rodon stuff of how you wouldn't be shocked if Marcus Stroman's warming up in the second inning. Do you feel that way more about Rodon or more about Heel? Because I think Heel has a lot of that too.
Yeah, the problem with Heel is he could get very walk heavy. Heel always feels to me, and maybe this isn't accurate, right? He just gave up 4 homers to the Pirates, right? But like if he throws it near the plate, guys generally don't hit it. Is it possible that those 4 homers were reflective of a guy who wasn't doing anything but throwing kind of something to kind of warm up for the postseason? I don't know. I love his stuff. He does not seem like, even when he's walking guys, I think that's about style, mechanics. He hasn't portrayed that he's afraid. I know Clark Schmidt, I don't think he's a whistling in the graveyard guy. I think he's fearless kind of guy. I think I actually would start Schmidt in game 3.
Well, I was going to ask because it kind of seems like they might be leaning that way because they don't want to make a decision with game 3 yet because they want to see if they use one of those 2 out of the bullpen. And isn't it more likely that they would use Schmidt out of the bullpen because that's something they've done before? So does it feel like they might actually?
I guess so. We have to start really playing short of injury. What would force Schmidt into a game in those first 2 games, especially since it's game day off?
Sure.
Game day off. To open this series. So, you're going to be able to use whoever you want for how long. I mean, it really feels like if you want to get aggressive, I assume if it's a close game, Luke Weaver's in for 2 innings in game 1. And then with a day off, he's in for 2 innings in game 2. And then with a day off, he's in for 2 innings in game 3 if they need it. It's just that time of year. They would probably prefer not to do that. But look, I mean, it even came up last night. Our colleague Mike Puma is sitting next to me. Dave Lennon from Newsday is sitting next to me. And I just said, hey, man, at this time of year, the Brewers cannot hit Ryan Stanek. I would not take him out of this game. And Phil Maton, I'm telling you one I got right here. But like in real time, I said, you got to manage this game. And by the way, if you win it, you get Thursday, Friday off. So Ryan Stanek could go to a spa for a week if he wants. But I just think you have to – these games are like seasons. You got to – when you have a chance to win one, you got to attack the heck out of it.
Weaver and Canley seem like they can get 9 outs in game one. However that divides, it could be two innings for Weaver. But would Schmidt be like? Let's say Cole Lilly gives him 5. Is Schmidt the guy to go to in the 6th inning? Like, is he your third most trusted reliever? Would he be
I
the
don't
guy?
know. He seems to like Cousins, right? If he thinks he's right, I think he likes Hamilton. If he thinks he's right, I think the one thing you risk, Tommy, whether you like the stuff or not, is taking somebody. We're just talking about this with Birdie or what Jay Happ did a few years ago. Is taking someone who literally hasn't done something all year and say, "Hey, it's the biggest game of the year. Do something you haven't done all year." I understand the implications of the time, and we certainly have seen like the 2018 Red Sox, the 2019 Nationals. They use starting pitching very aggressively for their bullpen. I would say they probably had a fewer trustworthy guys, fewer guys that their manager trusted than Boone, whether it's right or wrong. Like, I think he trusts Tim Hill.
Yeah.
And I think, for those, I think it's not unimportant that Vinny Pasquantino has come back to the lineup. And I think there will be moments where Tim Hill is asked to go out and get him over the next week. And I think that will be a big part of this.
The one thing I do want to highlight, Joel, about Rodon too, he does have 2 starts this season versus the Royals. He's only given up 2 runs in those 13 innings, so that he does have experience against this lineup here. So it would be interesting to see how important that game 2 start is for you, Joel. And I know it's.
Can I throw one thing out? And all that matters for the Yankees and you guys, their fans, are the next 3 weeks. But think about how much easier life is for Carlos Rodon the next 4 years, which he's signed for, if he has a good 3 weeks, and how they probably have to play can we trade him if this goes terribly? Because you know how a guy could become untenable here. So nobody wants to play the long game right now. Yankees got to get to and probably win a World Series to mark this as a successful season. So let's not get ahead of our skis. But for guys, as you start to think, this is such a legacy-heavy offseason for the Yankees, and how comfortable is everyone? Like, if the Yankees go out early here, if they lose to an AL Central team either here or in the ALCS, I get it. They'll do some stuff in the offseason, maybe re-sign Soto. If they don't do that, there'll be a big move or two to try to improve the team and excite the fan base. But if they can't at least get to a World Series, how many people are going to be excited about the Yankees next year? Like, in the same way where you say, God, let's get a ticket package, or like June, let's hang out there. I was talking to some Brewer people yesterday. Brewers. Okay. They've been in the playoffs a lot. They haven't won a round. And one of their guys said to me, essentially, I can't tell you how many fingers I would give up for just to win a round, because it's hard for us even here to convince our fans, like, hey, yeah, be April to September, but our stuff doesn't work in October. And so it made me even more think about, they're the Yankees. They got an enormous fan base. Come spring training, the beginning of the season, there'd be a renewed love there. But it's hard to keep getting to this moment and not cash some in and expect people to keep coming back to watch the TV series again the next year.
It's a fair point by you, Joel. And I think I think Tommy and I expect the Yankees to win this series. And before I ask you for your predictions, I do want to hit on a couple more things here. The first thing I do want to ask you about is, one of the things I want to ask you about is Aaron Judge. His history in the playoffs, we've talked about the struggles he's had. How much pressure? I know we've asked you this, but I gotta ask you, man. Like, his numbers aren't pretty against some of these starting pitchers for the Royals. It feels like even more added pressure. You're gonna win another MVP here, Aaron Judge. How much are they going to be counting on him, and how much pressure do you expect to see on him Saturday to put on himself?
Yes, let's see if I could draw an analogy and it makes sense. It makes sense in my head. I wrote a column on Deadline last night after the Mets lost Game 2 about Pete Alonso. The Mets have played 164 games this year. It's hard to remember a good moment Pete Alonso had. His biggest hit of the year came in the 6th game of the season. He homered off of Alex Beto to tie a game in the 9th inning, and it turned out to be the Mets and Carlos Mendoza's first win after they lost 5 in a row. By WPA, by win probability added, that's his biggest hit of the year, April 4th. His 5 biggest hits of the year are all in the first half of the season. He hasn't hit a homer since September 19th. I think he has 4 singles since then. September 19th, right? And I just kept asking this question, and I finally wrote it, which was, is Pete Alonso really going to play this entire year where the Mets are pretty good and he's in his walk year and never have a moment? Like, down the stretch, I just kept saying, to get in the playoffs, he's got to win one of these games. Like him. Like, just put the team on your back. Like, hit a 3-run homer, win the game, avoid that mess in Atlanta that set you up so far. Like, can you win? That didn't happen. These first 2 games, I'm sitting around going, he's going to hit one, right? Like, he's got. So that hasn't happened. As we're talking, we're a couple of hours away from game 3 there. He might go through his whole final season without that moment. Well, Judge, regular season-wise, lots of moments, including this one. I mean, he's won games single-handedly this year for the Yankees. But this has not happened in the postseason for him in, I believe, is it 5 trips for him in the postseason to this point? Is it 5 or 6, whatever it is? So he needs it. He has homers in the postseason. Some of them are big, but none of them are big. Like, 8th inning, 2-2, change the game. And he needs it. He's a 200-ish hitter in the postseason. He has struck out in exactly 1/3 of his at-bats. When he has gotten to 2 strikes in the postseason, it has not gone pretty. He needs a couple of moments here, at least a moment of getting them through. And it just speaks to the bigger picture, which is him, Soto, and Cole are 3 of the 10 best players in the world. The Yankees probably have 2 guys who are going to finish in the top 5 for Rookie of the Year. They have a good supporting cast. They have a manager who's managed a lot of postseason games and has a contract about to end. You want to do a legacy ranking board, you're going to have a lot of people at number 1. This pressure, opportunity, crisis, pick your word. But there are a lot of people who have to have their moment. Of all those guys, who's the least is Soto. Now, obviously, he can just keep cha-chinging it with a big postseason. And we saw in 19, he ain't afraid of this moment, and he could rise at this moment. But, he's getting – the floor is $550 million this offseason, is my suspicion. But, that's the blind to get into play poker. It's probably $550. All right. If he goes 0 for the postseason, it's $550. Right? Cole, Judge, Boone, Cashman. These are big legacy moments. And for the first 3 in particular, because ultimately Cashman could point back to a dynasty in his rearview mirror that he was a key part of. These other 3 guys, Cole and Judge, will not be in their prime forever. The injury this year to Cole was a reminder of that. Time to win.
It is. Time is absolutely to win. You have your best chance right now.
Sorry to interrupt, Ryan.
Yeah.
Break down Judge even further. In 28 career at-bats against the 3 starters the Yankees will see, the Royals. That's Waka, Reagans, Lugo. 1 hit in 28 at-bats. 1 for 28 with 11, 14, 15 strikeouts.
I'm reminded, Tommy, of something the great philosopher Reggie Jackson said.
Yes.
And, if I remember his nickname correctly, it had something to do with this month.
Sure did.
He always said, doesn't really matter what happened if you have a bat in your hand, because you could change what is happening.
You can.
All you need is a bat in your hand to change the story. And so Aaron Judge could change the story. Pete Alonso tonight. Now, this will post. We'll probably know what Pete Alonso does tonight, but just in real time, I'm about to. We're doing this. I'm telling us to hurry up because I got to get to a ballpark, right, and do some stuff there. Pete Alonso could change some narrative tonight. Will he? He's going to have a bat in his hand at least 3 times, probably 4. What's going to happen? So what makes what we do is so much more enjoyable than most people. Like most stuff in life, we never get resolution. We don't know yes or no. We live in gray. In about 8 hours, I'll know if Pete Alonso did something tonight. In a week, I'll know if Aaron Judge did something against those 3 starting pitchers.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because Bobby Witt, I mean, you see what he's already done in the wild card round. He's special. And that is
He's
where
the best all-around player in the sport.
and that's where I wanted to follow up here from the Aaron Judge perspective now to the Bobby Witt perspective. How do you limit the damage this man is going to do against you, especially as a pitcher and defensively? How do you get after Bobby Witt and try to limit what he's gonna try and do against this Yankees team?
So it's very difficult to say, well, we're not going to let him beat us, because if you put him on first base, you're putting him on second base.
Right.
Probably. Right. He's about the fastest player in the league. You have good starting pitching. I think the Yankees went 5-2 against Kansas City this year. That means they were able to limit the damage of Bobby Witt, and Sal Perez is at least a borderline Hall of Famer, still having a very good year in this advance. I mean, it's so impressive as a catcher to be still doing what he's doing, but he could be pitched to, and he's behind him. This is not Soto Judge. And it's great, but it's not Soto Judge. And you've got to win these battles. I remember in 2001, when Ichiro was a phenom, the Yankees played Seattle in the ALCS. And the big story was, if Ichiro was on first, Ichiro was on second. If Ichiro hit a ball that an outfielder had to run more than 6 steps for, he was going to get an extra base. It's hard to explain if you weren't there, the phenomenon that was him. The bat-to-ball skills, the instincts, the quickness. He was very Bobby Witt without the homers. And with a few with more steals. Yankees unplugged him. Couldn't get on. Yankees pitching plan against him was so great, but we are talking the 01 Yankees. It was Pettit. It was Mussina. It was, this group, what's it going to do against Bobby Witt? Here's the thing. If they keep Bobby Witt in somewhat check, it's very hard for the Royals to win 3 games before the Yankees win 3 games.
That's kind of where I'm getting at. It feels like if I'm the Yankees, I am trying to say I'm not letting Bobby Witt beat me. Anyone else, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But Bobby Witt's the one guy we know we cannot let him beat you in this series because he can win. He can win games like you saw yesterday. The man can win you single-handedly games, just like Aaron Judge can. That's how much of an effect he has on this baseball games.
And look, nothing is going to be the old Yankee Stadium. Something was lost when the Yankees moved. I get it. This is the way of the world. Much better for me, much better press box than in the old stadium. But the old stadium, I love covering games there. I love covering big games there because the way it was configured, especially with the upper deck overhang, there was a real menace, gladiatorial thing about it. And teams that didn't, even the Red Sox, who played there all the time, but certainly teams like Minnesota would come in there in the postseason with 50,000 people, like essentially threatening their lives. And the Yankees had a couple of runs on the board before the game began. Like there was a distinct home field advantage in general, and especially at this time of year. The Yankees lost that. They need, and we know how quickly the energy in this version of Yankee Stadium could go from anticipatory and happy to booing everybody. And, you can feel that in the ballpark. And so there is a chance, this is a very young Royal team in general. Sal Perez is the only link to the playoffs and the championship in 15. Very few of these guys have ever played at this time of year. There is an ability to get on them early in a game and a series and kind of like pat them on the head and say, nice year, guys. But we're the Yankees. You just moved up from light heavyweight to heavyweight. It's different. Enjoy the winter. Will they seize that moment? Will their fan base kind of feel it, seize the moment? I think talked about the opportunity, the roadway for the Royals. There's a roadway for the Yankees to breeze by these guys, to blow them up, and get out of this quick and flex and begin to say, we'll see everybody in the World Series. Start moving towards that. That hasn't been this Yankee team this year. It's like a lot of opportunity to kind of flex his calm and gone. and they do it sometimes and they don't do it consistently. Is this their moment? They are much better than the Kansas City Royals. They are much better than the Royals. We are coming up with Bobby Witt here, this guy starting, if they could get the ball to Ursic, etc. The Yankees 1-26 and experience at this time of year are much better. They have taken a lot of gift horses and not accepted them. Can they take a gift horse from inning 1 of the series and kick the crap out of an underdog upstart team? It doesn't feel like it's who they've been this year.
Sorry to backtrack a little bit here, and not to dismiss the great philosopher, Mr. October, but Bobby Witt against the 4 starters that he might see for the Yankees, 5 for 21, only 1 extra base hit. So they have kept him in check in his career.
Yep.
And he's actually done the best off of Garrett Cole, 2 for 6.
Yep.
Well, that's where we're going to be paying attention. Final thing for me, Joel, before we predict the series here. What's your biggest X factor, or who do you think is going to be the biggest X factor in this series between the Royals and the Yankees? If you were going to pick someone on the Yankees here,
I'm going to pick Chisholm because does he bright lights big city this and kind of rise to this moment and become like that Yankee, or is this all a little big for him, and he kind of gets into Jazz Chisholm fantasy camp and loses his mind a little bit because he is skilled enough. I mean, remember, Jazz Chisholm could be like a Royal. Like, there are so many Royals who are like Jazz Chisholm. They haven't played a lot of big games, etc. Right? Chisholm has so much talent. And if you told me he went off for 3 weeks because he has been waiting for this kind of opportunity, I go, yep. And if you told me he airmailed a couple, forgot to get into cutoff position, wandered into an outer 3 on the basis, I go, yep.
There's a lot of Yankees that you've said stuff like
so
that.
when you're looking for an X factor,
like
that feels like an X factor.
It's a good one.
Tell me he's the MVP of the Yankee postseason, and you could tell me, like Rodon, that I guess we got to trade this guy, huh?
Or there's a new guy starting at third base because they do have the options.
Yeah.
You know,
Tommy, who's your X factor?
X factor. I like this. Why don't we go Anthony Volpe? This is a guy that grew up wanting to be the shortstop for the New York Yankees and is playing now in his first postseason. If he wants to be like the guy that he grew up idolizing, this is when he steps up. He grew up idolizing Derek Jeter, wanting to be the guy, wanting to be like Derek Jeter. Well, if you want to be like Derek Jeter, you step up in the postseason. You haven't had a good year. You started out well. How about we end well now? And we what is it? You bookcase. What is it called?
Bookend.
You bookend the season with a good start and a good ending.
You got one, Ryan?
I do. I think for me, it's going to be Austin Wells. Austin Wells, that's the guy who's been the DH the cleanup hitter for them most of the year. I wonder if they're going to keep him as the cleanup all postseason. Giancarlo owns the postseason, and I think Giancarlo is probably going to have another big postseason for them this year. I think it comes down to Austin Wells, though, when those big moments come late in the game.
You know what I think is fascinating? We picked 3 offensive players. We picked 3 position players, and the answer might be Luke Weaver.
That's true.
You know, because of his ability to – what do we make of this whole season where he's been pretty good, and what do we make about September when he was freaking great? And, you know, you see like the Mets, and again, where most people will see this afterwards. I think Met fans are really comfortable and confident if Diaz gets the ball in the 9th inning tonight. Now, they want him to get the ball in the 9th inning. It means the Mets are probably winning the game and could win the series. But, like, at this time of year, you don't want to Craig Kimbrell the crap out of the ball. There's a difference between that and, you know, and you see how magic can happen out of no place. I mean, look at what Bo Brisky has meant for the Tigers. Ursic has meant for the Royals. Is Weaver going to give the Yankees 4 to 6 innings in this series of just lockdown? We remove the chance of the other team winning a game because he's a little home run susceptible in his career. Hasn't been in September. looked like one of the hardest hit guys in the sport. I wonder about him as a X factor also. Hey, by the way, we can make an X factor out of, you mentioned Stanton.
Yeah.
Right? Like Stanton suddenly has a 5-homer division series. We're like, oh, all right.
Right.
So,
He could be locked in.
But the Jazz thing stands out to me because I just think he's so talented. And I also think he's so undisciplined.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. Joel, let's finally, let's do a little prediction. Who do you got? What do you think is going to happen in this ALDS? Who wins it?
So, I mean, look, it would be silly to pick anyone but the Yankees. And here's the cop-out. I think there's probably two scenarios for this for me. The Royals have gotten in too deep, and the Yankees just blow them out. That they're like the new Twins. You know, that, okay, you played, or whatever. Now you're in the Yankee Stadium. It's division series, whatever. The Yankees just win 3. And I mean win them. Like, you're not sitting around in the 9th inning going, I wonder which way this is going to go. I think there's a pathway for that. The other one is kind of like what happened with the Guardians in 22, where the Yankees were better and they couldn't shake them, and it took them all 5 to finally win. They were better, but like this team, there's been something missing from these Yankee teams that get to this time of year. And I am so fascinated to see which Yankee team comes out. The one that says, we're much better, we should go to the World Series, it's stomp time, or the one that's sitting around in Game 5 and wondering about all these legacies and everything because they've let another team off the canvas a few times. And so I hate to have that cop out. I think they are so much better than the Royals. If you pressed me, I'd say 3. And if you told me it was 4-4 in the 7th inning of Game 5, I go, sure, of course. That's who they've been this year, right?
That's the theme of the show.
Yep. I have real doubts about this. The temperament, fortitude, baseball skill of this group. I know there's something in there, talent-wise, and they have 3 of the greatest players in the world. And that has gotten them through a lot this year. A lot, especially Judge and Soto. This time of year is usually a 3-3 game in the 6th inning. You know? And it's like, had Met fans ever heard of Garrett Mitchell before last night? Like, suddenly you're playing this kind of game, and Mike Massey hits a 2-run homer for the Royals, and you're sitting and going, wait, the Yankees lost the game how? They opened the door by doing what stupid thing? I don't trust this group of Yankees. I've said, I think, pretty consistently for months. You could tell me they win the World Series. Of course. Look how talented they are. You could tell me somehow they lost to the Royals. I'll be like, yeah, of course. Of course. Unacceptable, Tommy, but of course. It's who they've been this
I know. I know.
No, but large picture. It's what I wrote in the post today also. I wrote about this AL Central, no AL East team, no Astro. Pretty healthy. Soto, Judge, and Cole at their peak. In the history of no excuses for not at least getting to the World Series, no excuses. Like, got it, crapshoot, short series. Oh, that guy really shoved today. Terrific.
Extra day of rest.
Yeah.
Don't matter.
They've got to get 7 wins in the AL portion of this and at least be pouring champagne for a pennant and going to their first World Series since 2009. Otherwise, I am generally not a World Series of bust guy when I write or do this because I appreciate just how difficult this is, how difficult it is to win rounds over and over and over again. So I had so much admiration for the Dynasty Yankees. Cover your ears, Yankee fans. You'll hate this. This is why I've had so much admiration for what the Astros have done the past 7 years because it's hard to win rounds, the playoffs, and they did it so consistently. And I assume they didn't have everybody signs all 7 years. So I know how tough it is. They have tough players with high baseball IQs. It's tough. It's never going to be closer to a layup than this, right? Can't script it. I would have handed a piece of paper to the most diehard Yankee fan and say, hey, this is generally who's going to be in the playoffs. Who would you want? You'd say, I don't know. Home field advantage in all AL Central teams? That's what you got, baby. All home field advantages in all AL Central teams. No excuses. And by the way, all your key guys healthy and thriving.
I'm also going Yankees in 3. It can't just be the fans that see that the Astros and the Orioles just got eliminated. The team's got to see it too and realize, okay, this is our time to get to the World Series. So I think they roll right through the Royals and roll whoever they face next too.
I'm going to say Yankees in 5. It's going to be tougher than you guys think. Well, not that you think that for some reason, like Joel says, and I agree, this team just cannot match that level that you want them to be at and that they can be at. This is going to be a grind them out series. It's going to be a tough one. I just have that feeling. But it'll be fun to watch.
We'll probably talk about it some, won't we?
Oh, we will. We will, Joel. We get all your thoughts. We'll get all your opinions.
Do I point at the camera and go, stick with us?
That's right. Stick with us. Joel, you're the man. Thank you so much as always. And we're looking forward to seeing how this plays out for the ALDS. And have fun tonight at the Mets game, man.
Yeah, I got another one here in Milwaukee. Playing tomorrow. See you guys soon.
See you, Joel.